Thank you, Phil, and welcome back to everyone. I'm guessing that people are thinking a glass of wine soon would not be bad. Don't be in a hurry back there. Anyway, I don't have a whole lot to say, but I do want to thank everyone for giving up their valuable time. We understand that, it's a lot of effort, that your time is expensive. You've got things to do, and you've come spend almost 3 days now with us, and we hope it's been really worthwhile. Attendees have been fantastic, great conversations. Sponsors, thank you, all of you. And the presenting has been really tremendous from day one through today. So from our perspective anyway, it's been a great conference, and so far not done, and that's really great. Thank you. I do want to say I hope it's either meeting or exceeding your expectations. The whole goal here is to not just share ideas, and it's a big part, but to meet people, to make contacts that are useful to you, that later on you'll be able to use. So please don't miss that opportunity. And also, we'd love to know how we can make it better. I have one suggestion I'm going to bring in a second. I'd be curious how people think about that, but I think, this is something, it's a living kind of thing, and so if you have ideas about what we could do to make it more interesting and more valuable, that would be useful. You can certainly forward those ideas to me, but anyone in the Tabor family would love to get them. So what I'm going to do, and it really won't take long, is just do a few observations from today. I'm not going to go back to yesterday. We've done that once, and then really open it up to questions. We'd love to hear more of your comments about what's important, what's not, what are your challenges, what have you learned, etc. So let me just walk briefly through some of the things I heard today and feed them back to you. Okay, better to have the right page than the wrong page, right? Here we go. So starting with the first presentation by Dr. Todd Simon from Rolls-Royce. What a great presentation. Without doubt, one of the clearest representations of the value of high-performance computing. They make it a competitive weapon. And also presented some of the challenges involved, so tremendous. Some of his comments were interesting to me, and they stuck in my mind, the notion that HPC modeling is going in two different directions, at least at Rolls-Royce, both at the macro level where they're trying to model the whole engine, and then at the micro level where they're looking at materials and also the processing of those materials, whether it's forging or micro machining and the crystalline structure. So interesting, they're using it at both ends. They still find value in maintaining their own 3 proprietary CFD applications. I thought that was interesting, but apparently they do. So it's clear that the commercial world, and there's still room for proprietary efforts, particularly at the high end of the software. So, and he mentioned when asked, their CFD, their 3 proprietary CFD, is not just a solver. They're not just solver programs, but they're a broader design environment. So that was kind of interesting. Emphasized the need for multidisciplinary teams. We've heard that throughout the conference, and we've heard that before. I think the challenge with that, and all of you know better than I, but the challenge is to make that happen. It's great to say that. How do you actually, make that happen is something that's hard to do. He noted the differences in civilian versus military aircraft requirements. I'm wondering, see if I see Anthony here in the back there. But we were talking about that. I found it interesting that the sort of same tools and technology were being used in the design effort, but the priorities were different. One, it's all economics in the civil world. It's, how can we save fuel? How can we meet, regulatory demands for exhaust and things like that, noise pollution, where on the military side it's just power. How much thrust can we generate? Although I would guess that the cost part of that is also improving, rather increasing over time. I did know that birds were, I always knew they were a problem, but I didn't realize 25 a day. That's kind of an interesting number, and that they were modeling against first large birds, medium birds, and then small flocks. I don't know, was it 7 birds, I guess, in a small flock? But, Anyway, the bottom line from Dr. Simon, and I apologize for getting his name wrong the first time I said Simon, was improving design, period, shortening design cycles, And reducing physical testing, all those things are hugely important at Rolls-Royce, only possible by using these high-end technologies. So I thought it was a great session with lots of takeaways, and yet another clear example that these are tools many more companies in the broader enterprise should start using. The panel, fabulous panel, on-ramp to HPC. Something I'm trying to understand better. It's how do you go out and learn how to use these tools, acquire these tools, gain access to the sufficient computational capability. All those things are huge challenges for most companies in the enterprise space, except at the very high end. And so our panel was, had a great makeup with, people at Oak Ridge, Susie from Oak Ridge National Labs, and Merle from NCSA, and Cycle Computing, and from UberCloud, and they all had sort of interesting things to say, and they were somewhat different. It was interesting that at Oak Ridge, the idea was to focus on projects that have a high impact to the company without regard to the company size, but that didn't mean a production environment where you were looking for something every Monday morning, but a 6 to 12 month project where the end result would be some sort of intellectual property, I guess, in a sense, although there are other ways you don't have to be sharing that, but things that had a high impact on the company's competitive future. So that was sort of interesting. I thought that Tim Carroll's comments from Cycle were interesting in that he notes that right now there is no seat of HPC expertise within most of our organizations, that it's fragmented, and sometimes, as we heard on the panel yesterday, people, will stealthily grab control and get a budget and try and build their programs. And his idea was that, look, it's going to have to find a seat of power inside our organizations. Right now it's all hodgepodge, but over the next 2 to 3 years, it's likely that inside organizations generally there'll be some seat of HPC expertise that guides that development. I loved the UberCloud idea of serving the long tail. So it's, if you're a very high-end supplier of technology, it's very difficult for you to work with the 20 million engineers and scientists from small firms who could still use these tools. Almost impossible, really. And the UberCloud marketplace idea is a way to do that. And I'll touch a little bit up from his presentation afterwards, but I just think that's right. These people, these very small firms who want to use these tools really can't get the attention they need from some of the giant suppliers. Let's see, Merle Giles, of course, who we've mentioned his book a few times, but his comment that in the HPC world, traditional HPC applications, are somewhat mature. We know how to use them. There are lots of variety. While big data is suddenly becoming an HPC problem, or is an HPC problem, and that the picture is different, that the world of data analytics is still quite immature. So the tools there need to grow a bit, that there's more evolution to go in developing data analytics tools. So it's less mature than traditional tools. Anyway, all of the ways we heard about, whether it was with a national lab or with private cloud providers or a cloud marketplace, are different ways to approach the on-ramp for high-performance computing for companies of all sizes. And I think that was really valuable. But in thinking of that, I was thinking to myself, and I had a conversation with Susie from Oak Ridge, that wouldn't it be great if maybe in a future conference, instead of having the providers, we have each of them supply a customer. So Uber supplies a customer, Oak Ridge has someone they've worked with, or NCSA has someone they've worked with, Cycle has someone they've worked with, and we have them come up and we give them 10 minutes to tell their story, or maybe a little less, because if you have 4 people, the panel gets kind of long, but nevertheless, a vignette of what they've done, and then an interactive panel of what the experience was like, take lessons from that. So that's my suggestion, and we're looking for more for you for what we can do to be better. As I said, all of the ways we heard about have strength. And my last comment, really, and I don't have much more than this other than we'll get into sort of general comments from the audience, was again focusing on UberCloud. Wolfgang did a great job presenting his vision and the picture they're developing there. And I mean, it's fascinating. They've done you have to sort of learn the language. So when when he says he has done 172 experiments, what he really means is they've done 172 exercises to find a way to build functionality that will work, that works together well on the various partners they have, and that 2,500 companies participated. Just generally a broadening audience. So clearly, his idea to use Docker technology, containers, to put all of these things in something that are then very accessible and could be purchased on a capacity needed basis for small firms, the long tail, tremendous idea. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over time. I know he's busily working on trying to find customers, business partners, et cetera, but it's really interesting. They've come a long way. I'm very impressed with that. And let's see, I've already mentioned I'd like you to tell us what's missing from the conference. I think we've worked hard to try and pull together something that would be valuable, looking both for specific technology problems, specific organizational problems. It would be really helpful for us, for you to tell us, okay, here's our grade. You did a pretty good job here. For example, there were lots of comments that, well, we need more traditional IT decision makers, CIO, CFO people in the room. Point taken. Maybe that's something we need to do better. So let us know. And that's really all I have. As I say, I'm waiting for wine myself, but not in that much of a hurry. I would like to open it up to to comments and questions from the attendees to each other. I realize that's sometimes hard to do, and I'll throw one out, which is, so given what we've talked about, what do people see as the top 3 challenges for a company new to HPC trying to get into it? So would anyone take a shot, for example, at that? There must be somebody brave out there. Ari, okay. And I thought, Ari, when you asked your questions earlier to NCSA, that you were just trying to stir the pot a bit. But
yeah, that was exactly. I mean, we tackle those questions a lot, and so it was interesting to get their perspective on it. So, top 3 things. First of all, I think is adoption. Right, is the organization understanding that it's a need and budgeting for it, because it seems a little outside the realm of most enterprise environments to need HPC, but it's really, really clearly, as was shown at this conference, the need is coming in a lot more. Second would be understanding what the use case is for the HPC, right, and designing the HPC to match that use case, rather than just going out and buying something shiny and putting it in. This is my mantra. And the third thing is hiring the expertise needed to actually make it functional for the environment and integrating it with the existing systems and putting everything from beginning to end in there. I think those are what I would define as the top 3 barriers to getting HPC put in.
Would anyone? Okay, we've got over here.
Okay, from the Boeing companies, we look at we have been using HPC for quite a while, and as you guys know, and so my top 3 challenges right now is a little bit different than some of you guys. Used to we are chasing the fast computer as much as possible, but now we kind of in the stage of getting more and more people started using HPC. So used to we using HPC primarily running the big problems, but now we have a lot of small, medium problems started running on that as well. So our HPC system really get into the scalability. We can run the very small problem to very big problem, so at any time. So that's we put the scalability for the HPC system. That's going to be one of the priority. Another one is applications, because right now. The hardware side, we have been advanced so much. I mean, we're so fast computers and storage. But if you look at all the engineering applications in the aerospace, 95, maybe even 98%, those applications still develop for single core, single thread. So we couldn't do any any parallel computing on that part. So that's going to be a significant challenge for a lot of engineering side. And the third one, I think I agree with you, is on the skill side. And I have a responsibility for all this enterprise-wide engineering applications at Boeing. The one big part is For a lot of those HPC problems, we require people not only understand HPC, but also got to have some engineering background or vice versa. And also you have a skill to do the parallel programming. We don't have too many of those people available. Okay.
Somebody else take a stab at it?
I'll just make a short comment. For skill base, you hire nuclear engineers because the number of them exceeds the actual job slots, so they all become computer experts, and then they start telling the computer people how to do it. So that's my facetious comment.
Well, you may have heard the comments I made yesterday, which was that there are a bunch of physicists who are finding themselves at somewhat less demand now, too. A bunch of labs are really slowing down. Fermi is one. And I know some firms have gone there to look for data scientists, because they know that. What about mistakes? We talk about,
We got another one over here.
Sorry, excuse me.
My top three priorities in a blended enterprise HPC environment are the three things of security, security, and security. And the reason is that the pipes are now so big and the access to clouds are variable depending upon what security procedures and they put into place, but I always have to protect my client's IP. If I don't protect the IP, it means they lose money and they cannot recover it whether they had a patent or not. But that's what I would say. And I could expand on it later, but that's basically what I'm thinking.
Well, I'd be curious, so what are your thoughts around some of the bigger cloud providers who have apparently not really been hacked? They're so vigilant, they've got people looking at it all the time, that they seem to be really more effective in protecting their environment than many corporations.
They are. Yeah, clouds are very, not all of them, but some clouds are very aware of all that. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that they'll be attacked. Because state-sponsored security breaches, it's hard to break. If you go into a site and then you get the logs to be changed as if you were never there, you could be ripped and not know it.
Right, that's true. Sir?
It's not the cloud provider that's the problem. It's the people who are constructing their virtual their instance above the hypervisor. So we all know that Microsoft, we all know that Azure and Amazon do an amazing job from their end. The problem is the enterprise now needs to set up their instance of the cloud, put their workload in the cloud. That's where the security part comes in, okay? And I already went through that. So, believe me, I spent almost 3 months with ITSRC, SOX audit, Fed Reserve, everything to get it where they all went like, yeah, okay. So it's a lot of work. But that's the part that's tough. Getting the Amazons and the Microsoft past security with all the certifications that they have, that's not a problem. And I actually don't see them being hacked because, frankly, to get below the hypervisor is going to be near impossible. It's the environments that are above the hypervisor that are vulnerable.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I agree real quickly, especially when you use Zen as a protected hypervisor. That's easy.
One of the things that was talked about quite a bit in various sessions was the notion of resistance on the part of traditional IT and certainly in some of the financial oversight. How do people think that's going to change, or will it change? You're shaking your head, so I'm
It will have to change. Because, and I'll talk more from the standpoint of I'm one of those long tails, the small company that I'm never going to have 100,000 cores, but I may have 20. Traditional IT shops, because of things like the security threat, I can never hire a security expert that will button down my environment well enough. So I have to go to other services that do that professionally for a living. So the traditional way of, if I can't put my arms around the box, I don't trust it, has to change, because for the small guys, the problem's gotten bigger than small companies can cope with. So they're going to have to go to some of these services, whether they're cloud or whatever the service is, who do have the bandwidth.
Tom?
So, when I sort of contemplate the issue of science versus business, HPC, one, we'd have to change the name. You know, the HPC acronym probably keeps a lot of the IT guys out of the room. But, you know, I'm hearing from many of the folks here that it's starting to get some awareness and attention. And one of the drivers for that will be big data. You know, as the IT side of the house starts doing a lot more analysis to improve the efficiencies of the business, you know, they'll bump up against the need of HPC capability and capacity. And you know, at our Leverage Big Data event, we did a straw poll of the audience, and I think, you know, and what we asked them was where they thought big data was on the Gartner hype curve, and I think we're on the sort of the downside into the trough of disillusionment, so we're still a ways away from coming out to some productivity level outside of the Gartner hype curve. And I've looked at some of the Gartner estimates, and our straw poll actually matched the, you know, where in the curve the big data was. So, you know, when you think about enterprise HPC and you layer over some of these data points, like Wolfgang's presentation of 20 million engineers, there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit out there for us to engage. You know, one of Susie's comments was we need to get the word out. You know, there's still a large number of segments, manufacturing, you know, genomics, the hospitals, go down the list, that still have not been introduced or are at early stages of, you know, utilizing HPC as a competitive advantage, but are not aware that they're utilizing HPC. So you walk into the door and you ask them what they're doing, and they'll tell you, well, we're not doing HPC, but we're doing these 3D modeling and simulation problems that just totally spell out like an HPC problem. So, you know, I don't think we're going to see CFOs and CIOs in the room on an HPC event this early. I may be mistaken, but it's just, you know, from several years of trying to engage industry in utilizing these tools, we're probably a second or so away from that. You know, I chatted with Larry about some of the issues at Gulfstream, and, you know, clearly they've engaged HPC on the manufacturing side. And then even if you look at PayPal, you know, their budgets are unique and distinct, you know, and so we're probably very close, but very close could mean 2, 3 years, 4 years. Just a take on that side of it.
The CIOs and the CTOs, the higher directors, VPs, the guys that, you know, are actually making a lot of the decisions, those are the guys you need to get. And those are the guys that, you know, we had to educate. But our entire HPC environment is within the IT organization. It's not a shadow IT. So.
And don't you think that with the addition of cloud to the mix, that would also propel it to the IT department? IT has lost cloud and gained it back now, so you would think that they'll be very interested in retaining control of cloud in many cases.
So, well, so if you, so cloud, you know, cloud has a tendency of democratizing it, you know, the capability at the lowest levels, you know, certainly at the highest levels of HPC, you know, wherever you are in the scheme of capability, you know, capacity at the extreme scale, you're not going to have cloud. You know, at the lower levels, you're going to have cloud computing. And there's certainly cloud applications for the enterprise. You know, and they're unique and distinct, and so, you know, you'll see a lot of applications for IT, enterprise IT in the cloud. But I think the budgets are unique and distinct, whether they're cloud or whether they're premise systems for R&D and for the science side of a business. You know, and I was hearing that was pretty pervasive, you know, in the discussions here, you know, with PayPal and with Larry and so on. You know, I mean, even Boeing, I'm sure. You know, so I still think we're a ways away from the budgets merging.
I don't think the budgets have to merge. Ours are.
No, I you know, I don't know. You know, so.
Yeah, so within IT, we have zillions of budgets. Right. So, and it depends upon where it is. We have our global structure, which is the global infrastructure. They have their own budget, and that's broken down into certain areas, countries, and everything else. And then we have different corporate towers that support either, the consumer products at AIG that, life and retirement and annuities and property and casualty, that kind of stuff. We've got commercial IT that supports that business unit. In fact, the IT executives at the top of those are actually called BIOs, not CIOs, business information officers. And then we have another corporate function that basically is all of the investment and treasury and all that kind of stuff, and that's supported by a different IT group because their needs are completely different. And that's where the HPC is sitting, that's where VBlocks are sitting, it's where the SAP is sitting and HANA is sitting. So, there's nothing that says that the budgets have to be all one merged budget. They just have to understand, it just has to be an IT budget. Where it's at in IT doesn't really matter.
I think we're saying.
So.
I think we're sort of saying the same thing. It's just, you're such a large multinational with many, many divisions. And so, there are these unique organizations within the organization. So, I mean, if you just, pull one of those out, they'd probably mirror what Gulfstream's doing, with an R&D budget and then an IT and an enterprise budget. It's just, you've got, a couple hundred Gulfstreams, so.
And from the cloud perspective, in our organization, the cloud perspective, you would never get there if you weren't in IT, because you couldn't get there. You'd have to put in a firewall request. The moment that happens, it's all over, because security has to approve that.
But it's going to be, I don't know, it'd be interesting. It's going to be interesting when businesses begin to really, and they will, begin to adopt some of the big data, analytics to be competitive. And they start utilizing all the sensors that are available and all the different layers of data that they can put in. You probably have that now, and so you're going to run into a capability and capacity issue, just managing that the size of the data sets. And so, whether they call it HPC or not, it's going to look just like it because they're going to be managing some major, some massive data.
Yeah, so just to comment on another half of the world that we see, I keep talking about research and research and research. We do a lot of work with, big multinational pharma companies, and they are starting to, their IT organizations, which are some, probably as locked down as AIG and, under some crazy requirements from, our federal, FDA requirements and other things, they are starting to really adopt the HPC mindset, but in a separate way, right? They recognize the need. They recognize that it can't be a part of the business network, but they're starting to fund it out of the IT group and create something separate, but it's still walled off inside the organization, right? And there's all this, open FDA stuff that's coming out where they want to share certain non-IP parts of drug development, like toxicities and things like that, openly to generate more disease remediation on the part of those companies. But so in that realm, we are seeing that the sort of the corporate ITs are saying, crap, we got to get into this. We can't do it anymore the way we're doing it because their scientists are starting to build clusters under the desk, and that is just bad in that environment. You can get away with it in a university or in an institute, but at a pharma company, that doesn't work so well. So.
Any other comments on the IT? Oh, we do have one. Yes.
So I'd like to add a little bit more about this HPC under IT. I think it is going there. So we have to be in the regular data center where other corporate silos are. Like I can say from my experience last 3 years or 3 or 4 years, big corporations actually have Linux or Unix system. They are in one group. HPC is another group. You have mainframe. So all are called middleware or middle level. So IT actually putting us in a side by side with the other Linux group, other Unix group, and also maintaining that way. So when budget comes, it actually comes through the IT plus incorporation with the engineering team or scientists. So I think there is already some framework, and we are already in the same place where you should be. So that is my conclusion.
Right here.
So I do see traditional IT changing. You know, we've got the DevOps revolution, we've got the increased use of configuration management, automation, X as a service, and those are working their way through IT organizations and having a bigger and bigger impact. And a lot of that is driving the need back on the business. And so the business, it's letting the business really dictate where IT is going and holding IT responsible for responsiveness. And so, you know, it's no longer okay for, you know, like, I guess in a lot of larger companies this is still the case, but in smaller companies when you need to be more agile and responsive to business needs, you know, saying, hey, we need to change the firewall, that can't be a month of passing the buck around, you know, in order to make sure people are, you know, preventing failure like Mike was talking about, right? Changing that mindset from, you know, instead of being afraid to fail to really try to succeed. So I see traditional IT changing and being more receptive and adaptive towards HPC practices.
Right behind you. Sure.
So at the large research and development company that I worked for in San Diego for 15 years, I had this problem because I supported engineering and scientists within part of an IT organization, but that IT organization was being distributed. But what I did was exactly what you're doing here. I brought scientists from each project to a conference all day long where we invited companies like the ones here to present their technology to the grassroots, to the scientists. Now, IT was invited. I could tell you stories about IT being invited. If you sit there for 45 minutes playing with your cell phone and leave, you're not learning. But what happened was the scientists and engineers did build those systems by their desktop, and then IT was compelled to support them because, after all, that's what IT does. And that's where I think the education comes. You want the grassroots because those are the people that have the problem. The CFO doesn't have the problem, you know? He's got a different problem. The other thing we found is that if you take the financial system, for instance, and you buy a certain financial system, and then you find the most efficient computer it'll run on, and I'm actually thinking of SAP because it runs very efficiently, say, on an SGI ultraviolet. Would IT ever buy an ultraviolet to run it? No. They'll spend 100 times that money to buy multiple IBM P systems that aren't going to run it as efficiently. And, you know, because it's just a database. Well, run a database where it should be run. We ran databases on Sun workstations 20 years ago. Everybody thought, that's crazy, you run it on a VAX, you know? Well, we ran a print server on a VAX for about 20 years. It was a great print server. The VAX went down, nobody could print, but it was the greatest print server in the world, you know? I mean, so this is just my want to chime in on that, so.
I'm getting the high sign for 5 minutes. But I think it's interesting because one thread is just that a lot of the HPC adoption driven by applications and sort of people who have a problem rather than wait for permission, just go out and find the money or find the tools and build it, and then it has to be supported. Hence the comment earlier today about there's no HPC center of expertise. It's spread around the different groups who have the different needs. Any last comments on the IT, HPC? Okay.
Yeah, so keying off of what David was saying, I think it's how is IT viewed in your organization? Is IT a cost center, or does IT give you a competitive advantage? And I think that's key.
Exactly. And so HPC is seen as a competitive advantage. IT is a support organization cost center. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm getting the high sign here, but again, I want to thank everyone. It really has been a very full 2.5 days, I guess, if we go with Monday. I want to introduce two of my colleagues. I know I introduced Allison, Diana yesterday. Allison, just hold your hand up. I mean, she's the new leader of Enterprise Tech, which is our publication that looks just at this space. She's done a great job, so you should all know her and get her contact information. And then behind her is Alex Woody, who runs Datanami for us. And Alex, you won't find someone more informed in the journalism world anyway, I think, about big data problems in the technology. So another person you should know, because that certainly crosses many boundaries. And with that, unless there's anything else, I guess I will adjourn. But thank you very, very much, all of you.